Coordinated, episode 297, Teammates, Fee Reductions. Greetings, AP coordinators. I'm Karli, school counselor and AP coordinator. Thanks for joining us. It's Monday, October 13th, 2025. Today, I get to speak with and learn from another College Board teammate, Mike Berry, Senior Director, Contracts and Grants at College Board. Mike is with us today to talk about his role at College Board, and we'll also be diving in and discussing something very important to us AP coordinators and our AP students, AP fee reductions. It's time to do this. Let's go, AP coordinators. It's time to get coordinated. Good morning, Mike. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Good morning, Karli. Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
You know, Mike, as an AP coordinator, I know in theory that there are lots of people working day in and day out at College Board to make what we do as AP coordinators easier, smoother, and more efficient. But as someone who loves the details, and I think a lot of AP coordinators can relate to that, I want to know more. So today I get to talk with you, Mike, about what brought you to AP at College Board and more about your day-to-day responsibilities. So can you share with our coordinated listeners how you came to work at the College Board?
Yes. So my path to working at the College Board started back in college. And so growing up, my mom was a teacher and my dad was a lawyer. And when I was graduating from college, I was kind of interested in both of those areas as a potential career. But I knew that I wanted to get some real world experience first before I looked at going to law school. So I started looking in education at doing something like teaching for Teach for America when a friend of mine in college, his mom worked at the College Board at the time. And she mentioned to me that there was an entry level position opening up in AP to be a program associate, which was essentially an assistant to the then head of AP, Trevor Packer. And Trevor's still the head of AP to this day, and I'm still here working in AP now 22 years later this month.
Wow. So you must love it. It's something that you were able to kind of continue doing. So what drew you now to your current role in AP then?
So, in terms of my current role working as Senior Director of Contracts and Grants, I had mentioned that I was interested in potentially going to law school, and I never gave up that goal. And so, after working for a few years in AP, I decided to go to law school at night. So, I continued working full time for the College Board, and I went to law school at night for 4 years. I took and passed the New York bar exam. And then, around the time that I graduated from law school, there was an opportunity to take over the position I'm still in to this day, which is working on state contracts and funding for AP exams. And so I was kind of able to combine both my interests coming out of college, which is continuing to work in education, but also do some of the legal work that I also became interested in law school. So I never decided between the two. I kind of combined them both into one role, which is what drew me to this work.
That's awesome. That's the best of both worlds then.
Absolutely.
So now that you've been in this job for a while and you're got the swing of it, Mike, what do you find to be the most interesting part of this job?
Yeah, the most interesting part of the job is that I get to work with educators all across the country. And so that makes every day kind of different. Just this morning I was working with things for Arizona, Indiana. I worked with the school district in California. So every day I'm working with educators in all different states, but all with the shared goal of helping kids get access to AP courses and exams. So that's what I really love about it every day.
That is so cool. As a school counselor, I can relate to the every day is different. Sometimes you come up with a plan for the day and the plan is nothing that you thought it was going to be,
Definitely.
which is exciting, right? Keeps us on our toes.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So as we're moving forward to kind of talk about AP exam fees, I think the exam fees and the reductions and subsidies can be a bit tricky to understand at first. So, can we discuss AP exam fees themselves before we discuss the fee reductions?
Yes, I think that's a great place to start. Let's get into it.
Okay. So, for the 2025-2026 school year, the exam fee for on time orders is $99 per exam, including AP Capstone Seminar and Research at schools in the US territories, Canada, and all Department of Defense schools. The exam fee is $129 per exam at schools everywhere else. And a special note, fees may vary for exams at College Board authorized test centers outside the US. I also want to make a note that the deadlines for on time orders are November 14th, 2025, for full year and first semester courses and exam only sections. For any courses that start after November 14th, the exam order deadline is March 13th, 2026.
That's right, Carly. And so, can I jump in here and just go over the College Board AP exam fee reduction and how it relates to the fees as well?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so the College Board fee reduction is $37 per AP exam, and that's for all exams taken by eligible students each year. Schools are expected to forego their $9 rebate from fee reduced students, so that brings the total exam cost down to $53 per exam. And then on top of that, though, there's many states that provide funding to further reduce the exam fee for students who are eligible for a College Board fee reduction. And even beyond that, some states also provide funding for students who are not eligible for the College Board fee reduction. So we'll go into more detail about state funding later, but I wanted to mention that these students aren't necessarily paying the full exam fee each year because of funding available.
hmm Thank you for that, Mike. Now, some of our listeners, believe it or not, might be brand new AP coordinators or someone that has never worked on the ordering side before. So, can you share with us who is eligible for an AP exam fee reduction?
Yes. So, first, before I get into the eligibility criteria, I also just want to point out that AP's fee reduction eligibility criteria is the same criteria used for fee waivers for the SAT suite of assessments. So, in AP, we wanted to make sure we were aligned on the criteria so that counselors in schools could determine if one student's eligible for SAT or PSAT fee waivers, that same student would also be eligible for the AP fee reductions. So, with
That's
that
so
said,
helpful.
yeah, that's good to hear. With that said, the primary criteria for students to qualify for AP exam fee reductions is students who are either enrolled in or eligible to participate in the National School Lunch Program. And so those students qualify for the fee reduction on all exams they take each year. So essentially, students who qualify for free reduced lunch. If your school prefers to use another method for determining which students qualify, we also have alternative criteria that are allowed. And so the alternative criteria are as follows. The student is enrolled in a federal, state, or local program that aids students from low income families, for example, federal TRIO programs such as Upward Bound. The student's family receives public assistance. The student lives in a federally subsidized public housing or a foster home or is unhoused, or the student is a ward of the state or an orphan. In addition to these eligibility criteria, I also wanted to take this opportunity to address two meal programs that I often get questions about and how they relate to students being eligible for fee reductions. One is the community eligibility provision, and the other is just states and districts that have universal free school meal programs in place. So, the community eligibility provision for AP corners who may not be aware is a federal meal program that enables high poverty U.S. schools and districts to offer breakfast and lunch at no charge to all students in their district or school. So schools and districts that are participating in the community eligibility provision must still determine each individual student's eligibility. All students aren't automatically eligible
Mm.
for AP exam fee reductions. And this same thing applies for states with the universal free school meals programs. Not every student in the state is automatically eligible for AP exam fee reduction. AP coordinators are still supposed to work on determining each individual student's eligibility. So I've heard the alternative criteria I mentioned are helpful for AP coordinators in these situations.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Mike. One of the most common questions I hear at the back to school workshops or at Chat with the Coordinator is, how do I find a list of students who qualify for fee reductions? And so, AP coordinators listening, as Mike just explained, since the primary criteria is eligibility for the National School Lunch Program, you might need to get in contact with someone in your building or someone at the district office that has that specific information. My school is one of those schools that all students receive free lunch regardless of eligibility. So, this is something that I have to work with my district office and our students and parents on discovering or finding out who is eligible for the free or reduced lunch program. And our school uses the same payment platform that students buy school lunches with to buy AP exams. So our students kind of submit that application for free or reduced school lunch in the same online portal as buying AP exams. And then that way, if they do qualify, when they go to buy their AP exams are already price adjusted to do that fee reduced. So for me, it's a little bit easier. It's kind of built into the same program. But for anyone listening, this is something that you want to make sure you know where to go to find this information. So make sure that you are speaking to someone at your district office or someone in your building who could point you to the right place to get that information.
Thanks, Kali. That's really helpful to hear how it works for me in your school. And what I hear from AP coordinators is that now is a good time to work on finding out which students qualify. We recommend the best practice is to try to include that information in your initial order and registration and ordering. So by November 14th, the November 14th ordering deadline. However, if you need more time to identify students, the final deadline to indicate which students qualify for AP exam fee reductions is not until April 30th, 2026, and you have up until 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to do so. So I wanted to mention that final deadline, even though we recommend you try to do it in the fall if you can.
Yes, and thanks for pointing that out. Since my fee reductions are viewable to me when I download my order, I'm easily able to indicate which students are eligible in my initial order. But it does ease my mind that I have until April 30th to double check and to add any students I might have missed in AP registration and ordering.
So, Carly, you mentioned that you indicate your fee reduction eligible students in AP registration and ordering. Would you say that's a fairly easy process? Hard? Is it a pain to do that every year? I'd love to hear your experience in indicating which students qualify.
Oh my gosh, yes. It is an easy process for me in AP registration and ordering. On the students page, there is a column titled Reduce Fee with a checkbox. For any student that is eligible for the fee reduction, I just click the box for one of their exams. If the student is taking multiple exams, changing their status for one of their exams changes the status for all of their exams. So I don't need to click every box. I love that for us. Anything that saves me a click, I appreciate. So I just go through my list and click the box for each student, and that's it. I'm done.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that it's a fairly easy process for you to do that every year then.
Yes. And speaking of all of this funding, I know there is a lot more that goes into the funding for AP exams. Mike, could you share with our listeners what state funding looks like across the US?
I can. So we're still in the process of confirming all the state funding for 2026 AP exams. So I'll provide a summary of the state funding for this past year for the May 2025 AP exams. So for the 2025 AP exams, there were 34 states plus DC that provided funding for AP exams for their students. Of those states, 20 of them covered the full exam fee for low income students. So that meant that low income students paid nothing for AP exams this past year. The rest of the states significantly reduced the cost per exam to typically a range of between $3 to about $20 per exam at most for their low income students. Furthermore, in addition to that, there was also 13 states that provided even more funding to cover all or part of the exam fee for standard fee students.
Hmm.
So there's significant state support for AP exams across the country, not just for low income students, but in some cases for all students as well.
Wow. And our listeners are scattered across the country. So, where can we find each state's AP exam fee assistance policies?
On AP Central, so that is where we post them all. So we have a dedicated state AP exam fee assistance page. And it lists every state and it provides a detailed breakdown of what funding is, or in some cases is not available for AP exams. And it also includes instructions for what AP coordinators need to do before and after exams in terms of making sure your students receive the state funding that's available. So we'll include a link to the URL in the show notes.
Mhm.
But also, if you go to AP Central and navigate to the exam ordering and fees section, there's a link to the state fee assistance page there. And just to note, we're still finalizing the funding information for 2026 AP exams, but we've already confirmed and posted the state funding information for 41 states plus DC. So we're getting close to confirming all. And to make AP coordinators aware, once we post the state's funding information on AP Central, we'll also follow up with an email to you and to principals and district contacts in your state to let you know, hey, your state's information is now posted. Here's a link to your state funding information to go and review it.
Great. Thank you so much. So, for 41 states, we can take a look at that link in the show notes, and everyone can be on the lookout for an email as well. So each state has their own policies. What about federally? What are the different federal funding programs that can be used for AP exam fees?
So, if your state doesn't provide dedicated funding for AP exams, there are still some potential federal funding options that schools and districts can tap into as funding sources to pay for AP exams for your students. So, the first one is Title IV Part A block grant funding. So, this program was first implemented as part of the Every Student Succeeds Act, which took effect starting back in the 2017-18 school year. And so, for this school year, 2025-26, funding distributed from the Title IV Part A block grant program can be used by states and districts for AP exams to be taken in May 2026. The second potential federal funding option is Title I funding. So districts or schools receiving Title I funds may also use those funds to cover AP exam fees for low-income students. That's an allowable use of that Title I federal funding. So again, if you're in a state that doesn't have funding, or maybe your state doesn't cover the full exam fee for low-income students, you may want to talk to someone in your school or your district office that manages these grant programs to see if any of these federal funding options could potentially be used to help pay for students' AP exams. And one final thing to note on this is, as of the date that we're recording this, we are in a government shutdown. The federal funding I noted for 2026 AP exams was appropriated in the FY 2025 budget cycle. And so it was forward funding and has already been distributed to states and districts for use. So it isn't being currently held up by the current government shutdown.
Thank you for sharing that, Mike. That is very timely information that those of us listening to this can be aware of that. Thank you. As AP coordinators, I'm sure that we can each think of individual students that benefit tremendously from the College Board fee reductions. But I'm wondering, overall, if you could give us the big picture, how much funding is provided to students?
Sure. So I'll give you three big picture funding figures here. So in 2025, College Board provided 54.3 million in AP exam fee reductions for low income students. And so in addition to the College Board funding, states then provided 38.3 million for low income students exams and also approximately 65.2 million for standard fee students exams. So between the College Board fee reduction and the state funding provided, that's a total of nearly 158 million in funding that was provided for 2025 AP exams for students.
Wow, that is incredible how many resources are utilized to support low income students and all students. I'm sure this affects how many students are taking AP exams too. Mike, do you have any data on what low income student AP participation has looked like recently?
Yes, so we've seen tremendous growth in the number of low-income students participating in AP during my career here, and especially in recent years. So in just the last 5 years, since 2021, the number of low-income students taking AP exams increased from 571,000 students to 839,000 students. So that's 268,000 more low-income students, nearly 50% growth,
Wow.
who took at least one AP exam in 2025 versus 2021. And so that's amazing growth. And some students also take multiple AP exams. So the number of AP exams taken by low income students in the last 5 years has grown even more, from just under 1 million AP exams taken by low income students in 2021 to nearly 1.5 million exams taken in 2025. So, very impressive growth that we hope will continue as even more students across the country continue to seek access to AP courses and exams.
From my school counselor lens, that is so inspiring. And I can see that at my school, in my little bubble. My students are definitely taking more exams. So, students are really being given a great opportunity to explore courses they're interested in and potentially earn college credit for those experiences. And from this conversation, Mike, I can really see how College Board is partnering with us at schools to make these exams more accessible to all of our students.
Absolutely. And, we see this very much as a partnership between the College Board, states, districts, and schools to provide not just academic support, but also financial support for students to make sure that cost isn't a barrier for them to take AP courses and exams each year that they want to take.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get bogged down in the logistics, details, planning, and just the tasks. But when you zoom out, you can see how important this is to students and how providing this funding gives millions of students the ability to showcase their knowledge in ways they maybe couldn't if this funding wasn't there. Mike, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing about this somewhat complicated but extremely important topic.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm happy to share this information with AP coordinators, and this was really fun.
So, before I let you go, I do have one more final question for you, Mike. What's one thing you're doing right now for AP coordinators that helps keep you coordinated?
So right now, I mentioned that, we're working on confirming all of the state funding information for May 2026 AP exams. So we're getting close. We have 41 states confirmed, but the goal is to confirm hopefully all states prior to that November 14th ordering deadline, if possible. So between now and November 14th, if you haven't already received an email and confirmed your state funding information, keep an eye out for that on the state AP exam fee assistance page I mentioned, or for an email from us. And then just one other thing I want to mention, Carly, is that once a state confirms the funding that they're providing, I also go ahead and enter the state subsidies if they're available into AP registration and ordering. So that way, AP coordinators will see those state subsidies applied against your exam costs. And so hopefully that helped you determine how much you need to collect from students this fall.
That is very helpful. Thank you, Mike, for doing that.
You're welcome.
AP coordinators, now's the time to locate your fee reduction information. It might be a list, it might be a contact at your school or at your district office. If you don't know, start with an administrator. While we do have some time before the deadline to indicate your students who are eligible for the College Board fee reduction, it's never too early to gather the information to keep us all, coordinated. Thanks for joining us today. Abby and I will be back next week with a new episode. We'll talk to you then. And for all our support of AP students, yep, our support, AP coordinators, we are truly good as gold.
And maybe I just don't know. I'll say it over and over and over again till I believe it's so. I'm good as gold.
Hey, Abby, question for you.
Ooh, question. Ask away.
What is the one learning opportunity that 100% of AP coordinators enjoy attending because they can engage with their colleagues, ask questions, and feel safe and respected?
Well, so many AP coordinator training opportunities seem to fit that bill. But when I hear engage with colleagues in a safe and respectful environment, that sounds a lot to me like chat with a coordinator.
You're absolutely right. Chat with the Coordinator begins Friday, September 26th and runs through Friday, November 14th.
That's great news. AP coordinators join us every Friday via Zoom for free.
Free fun, free learning opportunities. Count me in.
That's right. Sessions are 1 hour in length, and you, AP coordinators, set the agenda. You can ask any questions you have or sharing best practices.
At 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a chat dedicated to brand new AP coordinators.
And at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, we have a topic specific chat. Topics such as score reports, AP registration and ordering, and more will be covered during these chats.
Join one or stay for multiple. Sign up for every Friday if you'd like. The registration link is in the show notes. We look forward to seeing you.